I just got off the Zoom call with our partners in India, and the government there is now monitoring all the email communications of our church planner. We're fearing for his life. We're trying to figure out a time where we can get over there this year. I'm going to meet there with some other pastors. We can no longer send him emails from our church account, like CCV Live email. Every email that he starts using gets shut down. And we're fearing for him. We're fearing for his family. We're fearing for the pastors that are there. And we're fearing for the people in their churches. At the same time, we're fearing what's happening in Ukraine and all the pastors there that we know. All of the work for God's kingdom. I bring this up because Revelation 19 and 20, what we talked about on Sunday and what you're going to talk about in your studies, this is not some intellectual exercise where we're thinking conceptually about ideas. We're talking about real life. We're talking about people in other parts of the world, but we're also talking about people here, people in our community of faith, our loved ones around the country who are wrestling with what it means to be a follower of Jesus in 2022, with all of the issues, all of the problems, all of the opportunities. How do we act? How do we think? How do we live as disciples of Jesus in 2022? When we come to Revelation chapter 19, this is where all of the fighting starts. And you thought all of the fighting was in the previous chapters. That's not the case. It's here. And what I mean by fighting is all of the different interpretations of Revelation. They all come to a head in Revelation 19 and 20. And so what I want you to do is on Sunday, I talked about how these misinterpretations of Revelations 19 and 20, where they talk about in the future, Jesus is going to come back and rapture the church out, and then there's going to be 1,000-year reign of peace, and then Satan's going to be all of these crazy interpretations that have no rooting in Scripture whatsoever. They miss the point. They miss the point that right now, we are in the Great Tribulation. Right now, we are in the 1,000-year reign. And what that means is, at times, we are moving forward and we're successful and the mission is being accomplished for Jesus and we're victorious. But at other times, we are held back and we're not victorious and Satan wins. So this is what the book of Revelation is talking about when it's talking about Satan being bound for 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a metaphorical, it's not a literal a number. In the same way, all throughout the book of Revelation, all these numbers, the 144,000, the 7 days, the 7 bowls, the 7 spirits, you're going to suffer for 10 days. They're all symbolic. And 1,000 years is basically saying that Satan is going to be bound when you are seeing a victory in your life. There's a reason for that. Satan was victorious. And when you're not being victorious, Satan has been released. It's during this time, this tribulation and the 1,000 years, the most important part of that passage comes out. And that's the role of false prophets. False prophets who lead people to pull back on their faith because of the beasts, right? The people and the systems that cause people through legislation, regulation, and repudiation to question what they believe about Jesus. What does the Bible really say that? Does it really mean that? I don't think it means that. And then what in the vacuum of that space always enters the false prophet. It's the mole. It's the person that works on the inside. The beasts are working on the outside of the body. The prophet is the mole inside the body that is working from the inside out to wreck people's faith. And so we talked about different signs of a false prophet, different signs that where you can recognize them. And it's always by their behavior, not their behavior, but the behavior of the people that they're leading. So whether you're in a friend group, you're in a small group, if you're joining the study in other parts of the world and you're a part of another local congregation, I want you to ask yourself the question: am I the false prophet? Am I doing that? Am I leading people astray? Richard Feynman says the first principle is to not fool yourself, and you're always the easiest person to fool. I want you to ask the question: are you listening to false prophets? But more importantly, are you looking out for false prophets? And so I know you're going to have a lively discussion. You're going to talk about the 1,000-year reign. You're going to talk about the brutal carnage that's going to happen at the second coming. You're going to talk about all these interpretations, but don't miss the point. At Jesus' second coming, the beast and the false prophet is thrown into the pit. Have a great discussion.